I'm Chelsea, and welcome to This is Hard to Say. I'm here to talk about topics that are hard to say, which was originally birthed in 2020 from my lifelong eating disorder. I would love to educate people on disordered eating and also create a platform for us to talk about hard things like trauma, childhood, even simple interactions in our day-to-day life, joy, art. So this really is for all humans. And with that, we'll get going. Today I wanted to talk about where I'm at now. I was hospitalized in 2020, May of 2020. And then I started working with an eating disorder coach and went through recovery starting in about, I think, end of July 2020, which was a 4-month process. It might have been a little after that, maybe August. I can't exactly remember, but I worked with the coach for 4 months. A lot happened during that time. And if any of you have experienced an eating disorder, you know that your brain is just not working properly. It's a very serious mental illness. So there was a lot of healing and a lot of re-habit forming and changes of thinking, and also just bringing my body back into an abundance space rather than a scarcity space. Because when you don't feed your body for so long, and especially consistently feed it, you get into a scarcity space where it really bleeds into every part of your life. I mean, it was bleeding into what I owned, how I kept my kitchen, money stories, people. I didn't have enough people. I didn't have enough money. I didn't have enough food. I didn't have enough clothes. I mean, it was just across the board. You're kind of programmed in this scarcity space. So it takes a while to come out of that. And if I could talk to that 2020 self of me, I would tell her that it takes time, and compassion and patience is absolute priority. The mental part is so strong. And then you also have your body trauma, and it's like a muscle memory that your whole body holds. So I would wake up in the morning, and I struggled the most with breakfast. And really breakfast and like eating close to bed. So I would wake up and I was so used to not eating in the morning, or I'd follow the whole intermittent fasting lifestyle. Or for me, that was a way to be like, oh, cool. I have a reason why I'm not eating. People ask, and I'm doing this for health. I mean, I cycled through a lot of different ways of eating or fad diets to compensate and also just remain in denial for why I was doing what I was doing. But the body is so incredible in so many ways. The fact that it holds that habit to me is incredible, but also dangerous, right? So I had to really sit down with myself every morning and create a space and a habit that would allow me to eat and feel good about eating. And a lot of people actually talk about this, how your cortisol is in the morning. And when you wake up and you go and you're stressed, your body is like, I'm not hungry. Like, that's not going to happen because of the cortisol. So I had to practice really opening up my mornings, waking up, moving slowly, breathing. Sometimes it meant even like laying on the floor and rolling around, literally. Not necessarily doing yoga, not necessarily like having a plan, just learning how to feel. That was a huge part of recovery. I had really stuffed emotions down and couldn't even access them. And I also found that if I had an empty stomach, I didn't have to feel. It was way easier. Recovery taught me so much. I went through 4 months of recovery. That's kind of an intensive. A lot of us have gone through periods of life where we do something intensively, whether it's like going to school or learning something or going to therapy, whatever it is, that's that intensive period of time where you're adjusting and learning. It takes time to integrate. And so that integration process happens, and we can help that integration process by sitting with it, slowing down, creating space for it, keeping up those habits, all that stuff. Or you can kind of ignore it and just like be too busy and push it off to the side. And that integration happens slower. For me, I did that 4-month intensive. It was a lot of homework. It was a lot of habit forming. I kind of lived off of easy to grab foods because the overwhelm of cooking, I like cooking, by the way, but it was just an added thing that I couldn't take on top of just trying to get myself fed. It came down to, okay, well, what can I eat in the morning that's easy, that doesn't make me feel nauseous? I struggled with nausea in the morning, like just in intense ways regularly. The mornings were just a battle. So I would wake up and just be like, well, start of my day sucked because I just struggled to even get nutrients in. Now that I'm recovered, it's crazy how clear my mind is, how good I feel, like the energy levels I have, the focus I have. And I can tell, like, if I don't have a good eating day, or if I wake up and I'm busy and I like just grab this little thing and have it, and then I'm kind of like looking around, like, did I eat enough? I have anxiety. I am not clear. I feel crazy. Seeing that connection has drastically helped me recover. It was proof for my body and my brain to make the changes I needed to make to get better. And so now it's 3 years later. We're in April of 2023. I just recently did kind of a big sit down check-in with myself. Like, okay, are you recovered? Like, be honest. Are you in quasi recovery? How are you being triggered? What habits do I have? Am I allowing joy and pleasure in my life? Because the withhold of food is also the withholding of joy and pleasure. And that comes down to eating meals with friends, having the freedom to travel because you're going to eat food out. Like that, I can't tell you how many times I said no to travel because I couldn't swallow eating somewhere else. I recently, since I've started this podcast and this project and put it out into the world, I've had a check-in with myself because, one, integrity, and two, it's very real. It's real to have triggers. It's real to fall back into old habits, especially when it's like a 27 to 30 year long habit. It's a body habit. Like, my body is obviously wise and knows it needs food, but it has lived in this like scarce way for so long that I got to check in with it. Like, am I getting enough calories? I kind of wanted to cover where I'm at now. What are my triggers now? What's the difference between being in the mental illness of eating disorder and being on the other side and having triggers? Because there is a difference. And I will say that now I don't have that same debilitating mental state that I had before that included obsessing, controlling. And the obsessing is crazy. I mean, it's all day long you're thinking about food every second of the day. You're also thinking about your body, and you're also not comfortable in your body. At least I wasn't. And I think that's pretty across the board when you're struggling with an eating disorder. You're withholding simple joys, buying a latte. To me, that's like incredibly joyful now. Waking up and being like, I'm going to walk to my favorite coffee shop and get a large whole milk latte with vanilla and add a sugar because I can. And it's not going to affect me. It's not going to affect my body in the way that I used to think it would. Obviously, caffeine affects us, but I never drink coffee without substance. Obviously, some people have dairy issues, but I thought I did too. And then I recovered. That switch has been just, I almost feel like the shackles released from my body, and I'm not carrying this 100-pound backpack anymore of thoughts and obsession, because I spent every minute of my day revolved around something I couldn't control at the time. I couldn't control how my mind thought about it. I couldn't control what I did in reaction to it. I had low levels of tools for my own reactivity in my like emotional body. And that's been huge. And I see that relationally, right? In my relationships, I'm now able to see how much I can tap into the tools I have. Not perfect, but I'm not in a deficient state and in an obsessive state anymore. I still have triggers. I'm still learning how to feel. And that's been painful, uncomfortable, overwhelming, powerful, freeing, joyful. I mean, even letting grief move through me has been so powerful because everything has an end. I still miss my dog who passed away in 2021, but the grief has transformed. I still grieve every now and then, but now I think about the joy he brought. And so those emotions are a cycle. And when you're in a low, you wonder if you're ever going to feel a high again. And when you're in a high, you wonder when the low is going to hit. For me, recovery has been so much about the highs and lows exist together and they always end, but the high is always going to come back. And the low may not be so low next time because I did the work this time. So that's been powerful. And so emotions, big emotions, and a lot of emotions is a trigger for me. I'm in a space now though, where even though I might be triggered, I have so many tools in place to get me to a comfortable state to sit down and eat. And a lot of times it just comes down to slowing down and breathing. There's also a meditation that my eating disorder coach, Flow with Chloe, I'll link her in the show notes, taught me. And it really comes down to clearing your mind and coming from a blank slate. Triggers cause anxious thoughts a lot of the time, right? And then we're kind of in this reactive state rather than a calm, thoughtful, I'm thinking about what I'm doing place. Closing your eyes and letting water even like wash away whatever's going on will create a blank slate. Then you can move from. A lot of times it's just sitting down. Like I just need to sit down and think about what I want to eat. What can I eat right now that will feel good? And then remind myself I deserve joy and pleasure because eating is so pleasurable. Like now I'm like, yes, give me that cookie. I mean, that is good. That tastes good. Now I cook. And if I don't feel like cooking, I don't sweat it. I go out and I eat. One of the biggest things to get over is, as I've spoke about on a previous podcast episode, is how my birth mom, punished me with food. And a lot of times that would end up in vomiting, which is terrible. That's just not fun. That's been one of the harder things to get over. And there's triggering foods around that. And I find when I'm in a high anxiety state, I'm more likely to be triggered with that. I do have things that I know I'll eat that are nutritious and good that won't trigger that even further. Sometimes I have to work with what is going on in my body. And that's been such a gift of self-care to myself, to have compassion and patience to allow myself to just kind of ease in and heal that. And I have noticed that in 3 years, like I couldn't eat steak in the beginning. I was freaked out by it. Now I eat steak. That was just exposure, like slowly starting to add that into my life and not pushing it and not forcing it when I didn't want it or was in an anxious space. That was huge. I still work with my nutritionist. I'll link her below as well. And she helps me a lot with snacking and just keeping me on track and also just checking in with like where I'm struggling right now because it's always changing. Like I said, my mental thoughts and workings around this is completely different. Now it's really just continuing to feel and not withhold from my body. I think a lot of us punish ourselves in different ways. And really not eating was like my punishment for existing. And so now it's just gifting myself constantly because I deserve it. I recently found an app I like that helps me be inspired by recipes because before I was just like Googling things and just felt a little lost and overwhelmed and didn't know what to Google. And I just wanted to look at an app and be like, oh, that looks good. I'm going to try that. I'm going to save it and I'm going to try it later. That's been really helpful. So I do that now. I have a lot of, sandwich things around because that's easy to do for lunch. Breakfast, pre-make hard-boiled eggs and have yogurt available and like some cheese sticks. For me, I'm not always, if I put the pressure of you have to have an elegant, perfect meal every time, I'm not going to do it. I need to have like grab and go options and options I know I can digest. And so I just prepare myself regularly to have those things. And also if I don't one day, I'm walking to the coffee shop and I'm getting a croissant and I don't care. I don't sweat it. During recovery, I kept my freezer stocked of frozen foods. And I remember having such a huge battle. It was like an orthorexic battle because orthorexia is like the obsession. It's an eating disorder and it kind of tags along with other eating disorders because there's just such a spectrum. It's an obsession over healthy eating and like labels and ingredients. And I mean, you still see it. I still see it in a lot of the eating disorder coaches and professionals out there still kind of making that part of getting better. And that's not a healthy way to get better. When you're getting better, you just need to eat. And I kind of did the all-in approach. So no foods were off the table unless I had an allergy. I found myself talking to my coach and my nutritionist about ingredients. Like, oh my gosh, I'm buying these frozen foods. Like, this is terrible. A lot of them are just pizza with meat and meatballs. And what am I doing with myself? And I just feel like a blob. I feel heavy. Feeling heavy was like such a thing during recovery. I was so not used to having food in my belly that just a little bit of food made me feel like a bowling ball. And I remember my coach just saying, this will pass. This will pass. You feel heavy now, but you just keep eating. I promise you, this will get better. And then I remember talking to my nutritionist saying, well, this has canola oil in it, and this has that in it. And I was kind of tripping on these ingredients. And she was like, Chelsea, that's not something you can worry about right now. Maybe later when you get this dialed in, but that's just, you got to let that go. And that was still that obsessive thinking, right? Because I don't think recovery is a straight line, and I don't think you just start it on Monday and it ends on Friday. There was a huge period of what we call quasi recovery, where you're kind of in and you're kind of out. And I think during that phase, it's so crucial to really make the decision, I'm going to fully recover, because you can stay in quasi recovery for 15 years and just still be on this teetering edge of, I know better, but I haven't jumped off the diving board yet. But jumping off the diving board is where the joy is. That's where you feel better. That's where you can get your life back or start your life. And that's where you can have meaningful friendships and travel and take risks and feel joy and feel happy and feel what it feels like to feel full and go to Thanksgiving without running 6 miles or doing the turkey run, whatever they call it. Like, what about Thanksgiving dinner makes you need to run? It's just food. It's just calories. At the end of the day, it's just calories. And we need a lot more than what diet culture says. And obviously that's specific to each person. But trust me, 1,200 ain't enough. And, depending on your body, are you a woman? You probably need more protein than you're eating already. Quasi recovery was a state for a long time. And that was also a place where a lot of integration happened. If I'm present, right, I have the ability to meet myself and say, okay, I'm going to be honest with myself. Like, you're not doing too great today. What do you need to do to get better? And a lot of times that meant calling someone or stopping what I was doing, taking a break, getting outside, bringing joy back in, reaching out to my coach. And sometimes it meant like buying Cheetos because I didn't want to deal with a meal. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to eat junk food right now because that's food and I just need some calories. And a lot of people might cringe at that. But, now I focus on fat, carb, protein every 3 to 4 hours. And a lot of that is just for blood sugar stabilization and also just knowing that my body needs that for optimal functioning. But that doesn't mean I don't have junk food every now and then. Having a bag of Cheetos every now and then really is not going to kill me. There's other things out there that are out for us that's way worse than Cheetos. And I don't even really eat Cheetos. That was just the example I chose to use right now. Yeah, recovery is tricky. It takes someone who's willing to be honest with themselves because eating disorders and being in that mental illness of that will keep you in denial. Not eating will keep you in denial. It takes a lot to admit that you're not okay or you need help. And what I've found is there hasn't been a single person in my life who has turned me away when I say I need help. They may not be able to help me, but they don't turn me away and they're not judging me for it. If anything, they're giving me a hug. And if they have the space, they say, how can I help you? And you obviously can't expect everyone to have that space, but I am incredibly interested in taking away the shame we experience having trauma, having hardship, having an eating disorder, having body image issues. I mean, the list goes on. We are in a guilt, shame forward society. I don't want to feel shameful for being vulnerable, for being tender, for having feelings, for wanting to eat more than you. that is something I want not just me to talk about on here. I want us to talk about it, open up that conversation. And I think that's why I felt that if I start sharing my vulnerabilities and what my life has brought me that's been hard and also joyful, maybe this will allow someone else to do the same and to feel like they aren't so alone, because going through these things can feel very isolating. I think I'm going to wrap this up and just say that I'm in a much better place now. I love food. I regularly post on my Instagram how I can't believe I didn't get these tacos my whole life. And I can't believe I didn't realize what a complete food pizza was. And hamburgers are crazy cool. What else? French fries? Make sure you go to the right place for those, because those can be bad. I'm in a better place. Still have triggers. I'm still a person. I've been in recovery for way less time than I've been in an eating disorder. And it just takes a little extra care from me and a little extra presence from myself to remain honest and stay in recovery. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you for being here. You can find me on Instagram and the web. Instagram is @thisishardtosay with a period between each word. The website is www.thisishardtosay.me. My more personal and graphic design account is @ChelseaWillett_designs. Those will also be in the show notes below. If you want to support this project and podcast, there's a few ways to do so. You can head to my website, click the support button in the top right of the navigation, and that will lead you to how to help. You can also submit your own story anonymously, or you can share who you are. If this podcast spoke to you, it would be so appreciated to subscribe, leave a review, click some stars, and share it with your people. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.